I think let's start. Yeah.
You want to start?
Yeah.
Now? Okay.
I would think so. Okay. There's people coming in. Yes. Good. So, Nina, I'll ask everybody to present themselves in the beginning before counting, the horse starts running. Just talk a little bit what you're going to present, and then we start counting, okay? No stress.
Okay. Can I see the presentation on the screen there, or?
No, it's just whatever's up behind you there.
Okay, so myself with this. Well, yes. Oh, it's already started.
No.
So you will start when I start talking, or you will start afterwards when I say?
I'll start when you start talking. Yeah.
Okay. So I will present you our project along pilgrim paths to Scherpenheuvel. That's a participatory heritage tourism project of Interleuven, which is an intermunicipal organization. Trage wegen, slow roads. My colleague Zoe is over there. The municipalities Scherpenheuvel-Zichem and the Basilica Our Lady of Scherpenheuvel. Scherpenheuvel is Belgium's most popular place of pilgrimage. It's a small town in the northeast of Belgium on the countryside. And actually it has more than 1 million visitors a year. With the growing interest of pilgrimages in Europe and beyond Europe, as the Camino de Santiago de Compostela, we realized that we actually had an interesting pilgrimage in our own region with a lot of potential. The main purpose of this project was to put these pilgrim paths back in the spotlight, but also to safeguard its heritage. We wanted to give a sort of actual contemporary interpretation to a centuries-old ritual. And also there is a growing interest in countryside leisure, the act of slowing down, stillness. And yes, we also wanted to make use of that new trend, actually. So the pilgrimage to Scherpenheuvel is very old. It's more than 700 years old. It started with an oak tree that was worshipped. It was a cross-shaped oak tree where miracles happened. In the 17th century, the church started to investigate the miracles. The Spanish Netherlands are in the middle of the Dutch revolt, and the region around Scherpenheuvel is actually in control of the Protestants. So the sovereigns, you see them there, they wanted to restore Catholicism, and they really started to develop Scherpenheuvel as a place of pilgrimage. They built the basilica, they built the entire town. The following centuries, the pilgrimage to Scherpenheuvel stays very popular in the region, but also outside of the region. There is a painting that will show up, there it is, of Frans van Leeuwenputte, a Belgian realist painter from 1904, that shows on the left panel pilgrims, and on the horizon you can see the basilica and the tower. On the other panel you see the pilgrims kneeling as they approach the basilica. Some recent newspaper articles describe Scherpenheuvel as the most popular place of pilgrimage in Belgium, but they also try to explain why is it still so popular today in the 21st century. And actually there are many reasons people are going there, not only religious. For some people it's a tradition in their family or community. For others it's an interesting destination for walking or cycling, but for most of them it's a combination. You see on this map, we started the project with 4 so-called pilot trails. We choose them because the trail was at least partially in use, or because of the presence of local heritage communities. The first trail is the one from Hersselt, which was actually already reconstructed in 2011 by volunteers. They reconstructed the route as they remembered from their childhood, together with the municipality there. And it's still very popular in the village, especially in the month of May, devoted to Mother Mary. The second route is the one from Diest, the so-called John Bergmans route. It's a saint, patron of the students. And the route starts in the historic center of the town of Diest at his birthplace. According to the legend, John Bergmans went on pilgrimage to Scherpenheuvel as a child. The third route is the one from Attenhoven, a small village, and they are officially the place where the oldest pilgrim association originates. So they go to Scherpenheuvel on pilgrimage since 1631 and didn't skip a year. According to the legend, their small village was ravaged by the plague and they were looking for a miracle. The last one is a route from Tremelo that starts at the Father Damien Museum. He was a missionary in Hawaii. But before going there, he went on pilgrimage to Scherpenheuvel with his family, and that's where they said goodbyes. So we reconstructed the routes during public workshops. We invited a wide range of local organizations, from pilgrim associations, walking clubs, environmental organizations, but the workshops were open to anyone. So in small groups, we drew the trails on the maps and indicated places of interest, but also problematic areas. After additional on-site and historic research, we reconstructed the routes, we mapped them in GIS. We sought also alternatives to avoid as much motorways as possible. And we discussed the routes with the municipality, with professional organizations, and made some paths accessible again. On so-called local project cafes, we asked the individuals and communities to bring their so-called movable heritage related to this pilgrimage, from old photographs to all kinds of souvenirs, which we documented in an online public database. We also interviewed 3 individuals of 2 different pilgrim associations about the so-called intangible heritage, the rituals and traditions, because the pilgrimage is still very popular, but these traditions are disappearing, and we want to document them and make them accessible to the public. The routes are embedded on our website. You can download them in GPX. We have put them in multiple free walking apps. We've signposted the routes. We also developed a pilgrim passport and a flyer. And we opened the routes, the 4 pilot routes, simultaneously on a public walking event in April, in collaboration with the municipalities, but also with the pilgrim associations and other associations, to give the participants a real historic pilgrim experience. We added some small reenactment with the traditional candle sellers, as you just saw in the picture. So what do we see at the horizon of this project? Small interventions are possible as resting places, information boards. We hope the public walking event can become a yearly gathering, and a possible follow-up project of the 4th pilot trails is maybe something for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We will do something because there is some people missing, so we'll have time. And there is not many presentations in the end. I have questions for you. I wrote it down, but in the end, we'll talk about all the presentations. Yes? I think Luigi is not here. Is that the next one, right?
Yeah.
Let me see. Yes, the next one would be Luigi is not here. So Simon.
Simon?
Yes, Simon. And to be clear, just talk about yourself and what you're going to present, and then you give a sign, and then okay. 20 seconds.
Okay. Start.
Good morning, all of you. So I'm Simon Battisti. I'm the director of a nonprofit based in Tirana. We work on early childhood and urban planning. Our organization is called the Relationship Center, or Centra Mardania in Albanian. And we work on this. Oh, can you go back for a second? Okay, now I'm starting. Okay, yeah. Officially. Yeah. So we work on this condition in the city, which is a really hectic scene outside of a school. This is the kind of concrete work that we're doing at the moment. I want to talk about what we're doing in Tirana, but I also want to talk a little bit about why we're doing that kind of work in the city. So yeah, I mean, basically for all of us here in this conference, you can, it's good, okay. If you work on walkability, you work on early childhood, and whether you know it or not. And the reason is because caregivers are walkers, fundamentally. For anyone here who has experience with a young kid or raised a child, you just don't want to go far from home. You want to be on foot. And so for all kinds of reasons, to be a caregiver of a very young child is really to be a walker. These are our walkers in our cities. And those are the conditions that they face. It's really, really tough. So the work that we do, a really important fact is 85% of brain development happens before age 3. So we work on 0 to 3, really what happens in that time from the built environment. This is what we want. We want caregivers to have healthy feeding practices. We want them to storytell. But how are they going to be able to do that without the proper environment? So we're talking about building environments to be able to give care. Why, again, and how do we transmit that? Well, basically, we throw parties in the street. We just want to show people what that might feel like. And a really effective way to do that is to create a kind of temporary moment of that experience. This is a school street that just got finished about a week ago on the same street of that party that we just saw. This is the outcome. So first, we really talk about, we throw a party. We show people what that might be like, and then follow up with bricks and bollards and lighting. We see the school street as the node of a neighborhood connected to a school. The school itself is the node of the neighborhood. That is access. That is the place that everybody can get to on foot. That is the walking destination. But we see it as a kind of continuum where the schoolyard itself becomes a public park, and the school street itself is a protected space of walking. If we did that to every school, we would almost double the amount of park space in the city. Okay, so there's 63 primary schools in Tirana. The average schoolyard is about 2,300 square meters, and added up, it would really almost double neighborhood park space. When we compare the average schoolyard to other kind of major public spaces in Tirana, they fall right within, kind of the scale. This is what we probably think of the largest open public space, but this is the largest schoolyard in Tirana. It's 6,300 meters squared. And the idea, again, is that as a node in the neighborhood, every school has, let's say a 10-minute walk shed. 70% of people in the city would be within a 10-minute walk of a safe place to walk. And so when we zoom in a little bit more on what those nodes look like, you see there's a lot of variation between the fabric itself, right? So a bad walking street fabric here, the length of the road is only, you have sort of 2,500 meters worth of road, whereas in this neighborhood you have 10,000. And also it's the length between intersections, so the size of the block, the porosity, right? But what we realize is that not every neighborhood none of these neighborhoods are only the streets. There's all these other kinds of spaces within the neighborhoods, like trails, like more informal routes that move in between the buildings that we might not be aware of. And these are really fantastic for caregivers because they're protected from traffic. So when you look at them, you can study, it's just one example of one. Again, back to Michal Vermeno, the school that we're focusing on. If you look at there's not many roads in this neighborhood. Again, this is a very different kind of informal, hilly fabric, but the path is much shorter and you have no contact with cars. So we're really interested in paths. We're interested in school streets. This is, again, the kind of vision of the node. You have the school street, you have the trail, and you have the schoolyard itself. And the schoolyard itself, also kind of what I'm getting to now, is a third kind of walking program that we're now working on in the city. This is, again, that informal trail right next to, this is the fence of the school. This was 2018 or so. This is a couple weeks ago. This was an initiative from the neighborhood themselves. They brought some money together and made this pathway usable. here is a pop-up school street that we also did. So this is a really cheap, really fast version where we turn the road into a one-way, we lower the speed limit to 20 kilometers an hour, and we widen the sidewalk as much as we possibly can. This isn't intended to last forever, but it gets the message across, and eventually, again, we'll work on it to become permanent. And here you see this giant schoolyard, and the most important part of this schoolyard is the track. So we're thinking a lot about this as, again, another form of walking within the schoolyard, another pace, another kind of just way to walk for caregivers in the afternoon, especially. You know, we hear from caregivers all the time that really they just want to walk their stroller, 7 p.m., put the kid to sleep. But you can't do that on the street in Tirana. There's almost nowhere in the city. It's hectic, it's loud, it's dusty, right? So here we are. This is from 2 weeks ago. We've broken ground on this schoolyard. This will become a really big green schoolyard. We're going to be planting trees everywhere, kind of an adventure playground. And this is, again, kind of coming back to the earlier slides, talking to, why are we doing this and for who? And how are we communicating this? Well, again, we're throwing parties. We're just getting kids there to feel this different kind of place. And the last slide that I want to talk about, I think what's so important is to turn kids into activists themselves. And we do that all of us do that, by changing streets. I think when we give them the tools to then play a joke and go into the street with a bollard and stop traffic while all their friends pass, this kind of pedestrian infrastructure that we can build ultimately is really empowering. I think that's really the message for us at the end of this is, how are we going to build enough healthy walking space in cities fast enough? Well, we've seen that politicians are pretty good at it. They're not they're not good enough at it. And I think from our perspective as a local NGO, what our role can be is, again, to build these kind of temporary structures to enable and empower people to become, then have voice in that work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Janine, right? Yep. Our first online presence. I hope technology will work for us. Janine, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, very good. Excellent.
Sure.
Yeah. So you heard what I said before. You can talk about yourself and your project, what you're going to present, and then you start. You make a sign or you just say start, and then your presentation. Okay?
Great. Perfect.
Okay.
My name is Janine Tunis, and I'm an Urban Mobility Officer at UN Habitat based in Nairobi. And I'm going to be sharing a little bit of information with you on the Reclaiming Streets project, which is being implemented in several African countries, but specifically we're going to dive into some activities in Kisumu, which is in the northern region of Kenya, and some of our Minecraft activities there. So I will share my screen, and I believe you can see it, so I'll kick off. So for those who might not be familiar, Minecraft is a game. It's played online in a kind of virtual world where people have tools to build what they want to see. UN Habitat has had more than 100 Minecraft workshops for different themes, and we've engaged with more than 30,000 people. So for the Reclaiming Streets project, we worked specifically in Kisumu, as I mentioned, in what is called Uhuru Park in the city center. We identified this area because there is a main street alongside. It's quite central, and there are 2 schools within a 500-meter radius. And the city was kind of doing an upgrade to the park, and we wanted to echo that upgrade in the surrounding streets to increase the accessibility of the space. So as I mentioned, Minecraft is a kind of digital Lego. Here you're seeing the Minecraft version of the city area that I highlighted before. And once we identified the site, the Minecraft gurus designed it. It includes as much detail as is possible, but here we paid specific attention to parking bays, street signs, and any sort of pathways or accessibility elements that were unique to the streets itself. First, however, we kind of had to set the scene. So we had an exceptional group in Kisumu. We had representation from a local disability association, some youth groups, and individuals representing those living in the outskirts of the city in more slum-like areas. Kisumu currently has a plan to upgrade the internal areas of the city centre, and it's hoped that this will eventually echo out into more peri-urban areas. We handed out some materials for people to learn a little bit about streets for walking and cycling in the African context, and then developed some capacities on streets for people and how urban spaces could be designed so that they are more inclusive and accessible to everyone. Then we go on a bit of an exploratory walk. We utilized a kind of in their shoes experience. So we asked people to imagine what the space would be like in the evening, what would be the needs if, for example, you were a caregiver and wanted to push a pram around the area. A lot of vulnerabilities were identified, a lot of missing parts of infrastructure were gone. And we also had several individuals who actually had unique needs moving through the city. And it became quite apparent that even though some of the infrastructure on the neighboring streets, which had recently been upgraded, was there, it didn't really meet the specific needs of those in a wheelchair, for instance. Just to identify one of the specific problem areas, this was one of the accesses to the park. During the rainy season, it's very muddy and quite flooded, and you have to do a little bit of a leap to get into the park. Not really ideal for somebody who has a unique need in accessing it. After getting everyone into the park, which was no small feat, we sat down and we had a chat about the potential solutions to all the problems that had been identified. This was fantastic. The park is beautiful, and also armed with the terminology of the previous sessions where we trained them about street design, they were able to pinpoint what was needed and how they could shift the feeling of the space and the accessibility of the space with the tools that are available. Then we got to work. Honestly, I loved this group so much. They had such a fantastic spirit. You can see this girl on the right-hand side is controlling the mouse, and it might be left-hand side for you, but she had a little tool with a pink brick. And when they were done with Kisumu City, the entire plan was covered in pink sidewalks, and that also introduced some other elements. What's really special as well is that a lot of these individuals have not had digital training or engaged with computers before. And so it was really fun to teach them how to use a very simple tool and also build their confidence in not only having a say in how their cities are designed, but also being able to do so in a fun and interactive way that develops some skills. We then provide an opportunity for public presentation. They were divided into 6 different groups. The chair of the Kisumu County Governor's Special Advisory Group for People with Disabilities, Youth and Women was present, as well as several directors for environment, roads and infrastructure. And at the end of the presentations, they each gave their feedback based on what the individual groups had identified as important markers. While they're presenting, the coordinating team quickly collects all of the main things that were identified. Here you can see a priority list, everything from a zebra crossing to, in fact, one person wanted a casino, but that wasn't in the top 10 list, so unfortunately not included in this list. And then, yes, just a physical, or rather pictorial representation of what that looks like. So lighting manifests in different ways in all the models, but they all communicate the same need. Also zebra crossings and a sneak peek of some of the pink infrastructure sidewalks I spoke about before. Lots of zebra crossings wherever there was an opportunity to place one, they did. And some signage, not just to protect the local flora and fauna, but also wayfinding signage so that people could find their way to important sites in the city. And then we celebrate. All of the participants get a certificate and they are thanked for their contributions, and we get to work in actually translating those designs into possible implementation projects. We identified 3 areas that we could have some tactical urbanism interventions at: outside City Hall, on one of the entrances to Uhuru Park, and then on the main road itself. The main suggestion was a walkway along the main road, which actually connected a park on the other side. This was one that we were able to do only in the cover of night because we needed to shield ourselves from the cars. And I'll show you some images on that a little bit later. But really exciting because this was co-developed with the participants of the workshop who joined a virtual session, those that were able, as well as some city officials and other design experts. So then we implement. We returned to Kisumu about 2 weeks later with buckets of paint and lots of enthusiasm, and we got to work. What I particularly liked was, other than just the scenery for the fish in the ponds, Kisumu was a lakeside city, and although in the Minecraft version there was no real emphasis on identity, when they were provided with paintbrushes and the freedom to implement, guided by the broad designs that we developed, they really brought in elements that they felt represented the city and represented themselves. So that was really beautiful to see. This is a little tilapia fish swimming down the cycle lane. The tactical urbanism intervention was a big hit with the city planner. On the day of implementation, a lot of people came to view it. This is the intervention that I showed you earlier in the designs. As you can see, there's some concrete barriers in the middle there. That's to prevent motorcycles from doing a U-turn there and making the space unsafe. But unfortunately, it's not accessible to people with disabilities. So we are going to continue to engage in Kisumu, and we are currently through the Reclaiming Streets project, to try and find creative ways to solve this sort of problem after the space has been kind of reinvented. Obviously, tactical urbanism interventions are not permanent, but we're working hard to make sure that something like this could be, and that the interventions are echoed in the Kisumu upgrading plans more broadly as well. I also just wanted to end on this image you see on the right-hand side. The individual who did this spent the entire day doing individual blocks along the road, and I think it speaks volumes to the need for making streets not just a place for cars to zoom by, but instead interactive and beautiful spaces that communities can be proud of. Thank you very much. I hope I kept to time somewhat, and I don't know if there are any questions at the moment, but I'll stay on the line in case there are. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. I know it's a bit lonely to be there, but be sure that we heard you very well. Your presentation went very well. So
thanks. I feel a bit like an overlord because I can see my big face on the screen.
So just to give you a feeling that in the room it was perfect. So technology worked.
Great.
One is Letitia. Not here. Is anybody online? No?
No. Louise?
And there is the video, the last video, right?
Yeah. Is Louise here, no?
Yeah.
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 Okay, do you want to speak a little bit about the video and then we'll see the video?
Not really. It's a video.
It's a video.
Yeah.
Just the context. What the video is about.
Hello, my name is Kathleen Jacobi. I work for Transport Infrastructure Ireland. And the video you're about to see will take you to Mulranny, which is a village in the west of Ireland with a population of about 300. And that's it. It actually shows the importance of walking, of providing walking infrastructure in rural areas and in little villages.
I'm living in Mulranny for 27 years. Love it here. It's absolutely beautiful. Very vibrant community here. But when I moved here first, it really was unsafe.
There was no footpaths in Mulranny. You couldn't walk through Mulranny.
The children couldn't come to the school. If they did, they had to have a couple of adults with them all the time.
You've got a national road going through the heart of a village. So that's a challenging environment for a start.
The topography there is difficult. You've got a cliff on one side of the road and you're down to the sea on the other. So no matter what they did, it was going to require significant intervention.
So we applied for a programme with Mayo County Council called Mulranny Community Futures. It was essentially about community empowerment, asking the community what their needs were and how they'd like to see the village develop.
Rather than someone telling us what we need, it's brilliant to have the community decide really what's best.
And the community were saying we need traffic control measures and we need footpaths.
that Community Futures plan. That was really what brought the whole community together.
We then applied to the Mayor County Council Heritage Office for a village design statement to see if we could get the concept of Morani as a pedestrian-friendly space visualised.
Members of the community would come in and chat one-to-one with their ideas. So you take them all on board. It's so important they're heard. So that's what the document is about.
Both TII and Mayo County Council were really on board from the start, and we could see that this could be a transformative thing for the village.
The need to address the provision of footpaths for vulnerable road users in the village was one that was only going to be more pressing over time. So that was the reason why we felt we should take it on.
The work started at the west end of the village at the church and worked its way into the village centre. And then the last piece was the Morani Promenade, as it's known.
That turned out to be the big opportunity.
Visitors can come down off the Greenway and this vista opens up before them. People use it, having their picnics. They can sit there and admire the view, and it's brought in so much business. It's just been amazing.
It made it into a vibrant, welcoming, beautiful open space.
Suddenly Greenway users see Mulrani as a major destination when they used to be cycling right through it.
You were able to walk safely. You had the Greenway where kids were able to use that to come to school. It completely changed life in Mulrani.
So some people cycle to get to school, some people scoot and some people walk. It's very good.
There's just that usability and vitality and sense of pride of place.
It shows the power of people mobilising and pushing for the changes that they need. That is hugely enabling for communities to do.
Okay. Good way of ending the session, because I don't think there will be anybody came in late.
No one came in.
Virgin, no? Okay.
No.
So you have time. Do you have any questions? People that, yes?
So I'd like to ask Stephen about Toronto and the definition of a school street, because it's different probably in different countries. I think in Scotland, where I'm principally talking from, it is something which has legal backing and restrict motor vehicles in largely all of them between set hours just before school starts and then when school finishes. But other time it's open to traffic. I think your definition is quite different. And I love the idea of making this park space kind of permanent as a tactical organism type as it can be. But can you just say something about that?
So our definition or our approach to the street comes very much from the context, the political context, the conditions of the street themselves, and is a reaction in a way to what we thought would be possible. And so what it functionally is basically extending the sidewalk as much as we possibly can. Typically, that means that we take away a lane of parking and we reduce everything into a one-way road. So this has existed for about 2 years. And we have always thought that when you do that, that makes it really extra easy to close it during pickup and drop off. So that is still the goal, but we don't do that at any schools yet. And the issue that we run into always with the municipality is that they don't want to rely on staffing. For them, staffing is inconsistent, unreliable, and basically just conflictual somehow to them. Like there's just some resistance to that. So I mean, for us, the goals of the program are to create as much space as possible during that moment of flux at the pickup and drop off. That moment where you've got a ton, 500 kids pouring out on the sidewalk, all the parents, just to give them that space. I mean, for all of those projects, we would we would love to close the street entirely. There's some fabric in Tirana where you have a kind of grid that you could close the street and it's not a big deal for the cars to go around. In other places, in the school that we were showing, if you close that street, you cut off a huge number of people. Like there's no other way around it. Like you have to go way around this. There's very few streets. And so in that case, it's like just not going to happen. We're going to close it. We don't, it doesn't, I don't know. Let's see. One thing, we do collect data on these. So we measure the noise levels, we measure the speeds, we measure the number of vehicles passing, and all of those metrics are hugely improved, obviously. It's a long-term process, and we think, so we've done, now there are 6 of these pilots completed, there's 4 more to come, and then that one kind of capital construction version that you saw with the red background, that's the first of those. And the idea is to get the city to turn this into a proper citywide program, and to find the way. Basically, it's just finding this balance between cost, impact on the community, benefit. Just finding that right balance that sort of the most number of people are positive about it.
It just seems to be, just to come back to that, it's not a question, but it's all over the place across the UK and elsewhere, no doubt, is if you start tackling primary schools to reclaim space, you've got the foundations for whatever you want to call it, whether it's a 15-minute neighbourhood, a 20-minute neighbourhood, a low-traffic neighbourhood, and all the rest of it. But those are the building blocks. You've started to create the fabric that you showed on a map. I just think it's a fabulous opportunity because you'll start with children.
Yeah, we found that that's really effective, and again, for us, the temporary closure, in the middle of the day or at night again, that street just goes back to being quite dangerous. And the purpose of this is to think about it being kind of a destination within the neighborhood. So that's a place where people can really spend time at 8 p.m. and still just low traffic environment. And so that mobility destination continuum. This thing.
I understand, right? In Scotland, you block the roads of primary schools,
so you
like 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon.
And you can use signs, so that becomes its statutory, so the local authority has done. That's the same in England, actually.
Yeah.
There's a few differences.
And you're doing that in all schools?
But that would be lovely, but no.
No.
So there are examples from, I reckon, probably over 50 or more local places with school street closures, using set rules in Scotland, and many more in England, particularly in the London boroughs.
Because that's being done in Europe, Barcelona and other places are doing that. One question I have is that you have one lane, so when they are delivering kids or picking up kids, there's not like even worse when there's like.
It is a line, right now it is a line.
Because sometimes it's better to close, because otherwise it's like a line of cars.
Yeah.
Poking.
That's an issue. And again, I think someone yesterday used the term a less bad problem.
Mm-hmm.
It is still an issue, and it's a behavior change. We believe, I think, in general, that if you inconvenience people to a certain extent, they'll just give up and choose another way to do it. So
I think that what happens sometimes is
any effect in car use for schools.
I mean, so these have been in place just about since April. So we're then school has been out since June. So
So just to continue that, so I have done a review, which you can find on the Transport Research Institute at Edinburgh University, of school streets in the UK. And what we find is there's very little displacement, which is one of the worries about cars being displaced and causing problems. They're really temporary and easily solvable. But what we do see is what I think is quite significant in terms of the dose. The dose is very small in terms of the intervention. It has a really significant effect in changing mode share by at least more than 10 percentage points of walking. You get a really significant impact because, as your point is, that you just do a small thing, but people can give up, say, I was only driving half a mile anyway, because we know many people drive very short distances to take their children. So they give up and they just decide to walk, and then they're visualized into it, and that's it.
Okay, here.
Yeah, my comment, it's Simon, you just triggered something when you talked about the staff in the school was reluctant to, and my point is really for a different audience, which is, school streets have been talked about in the US. If anybody looks at the drop-off and pick-up at school streets in the US, or not at school streets, just at elementary schools in the US, the level of staffing that the school is providing for non-school streets, just to enable parents to drop off and pick up. They have half the teachers out. When you try and have a meeting in the school, they're like, oh no, all our teachers have to go out to drop off and pick up. They're already doing the staffing thing. So just for whoever, when that one comes up. So, anyway.
And actually, I would go back a little bit to the staffing as well, because that was fascinating, and I've been fighting for this as well. So that schools become almost like the civic center of a neighborhood. Yeah. So and what is happening, at least I'm based in Portugal, is that schools become like a surrounded by fences, and they are even asking ID cards to get in and out. It's really, really tough. And one of the problems to create passes through schools is that security problems and staffing as well, because then you need someone there permanently looking at people to go in and out.
That's the opposite development, because you said the added value should be that at other times it could be a destination in the area. And the FAQ described is that it closes down. You want to open the school square for the public in the evening because there's no other place to walk.
Yes.
So that's added value on the situation. And it goes everything down because it's maybe the most handy situation to be able to manage things.
And that was my question. Do you feel that as well, that from the school community they don't want strangers in?
Yeah. That's the biggest pushback. Is the teachers.
The teachers don't like.
They're really worried about what's going to happen on the schoolyard. So they're a little to them. They don't. It doesn't matter how much we feed them the statistics about learning improvements or kids arriving to school calm after a good walk, or to them it's basically meaningless. To them, this change is just more work. It's frustrating, stressful. It feels like they're having to change something. So, and with the schoolyard itself, that is going to require another guard. So that is another salary that the school is going to have to pay for that person to be there after hours. They're unwilling to just leave it as a real, unstaffed park.
Yeah. See, after hours is interesting also because a lot of NGOs and people meeting places, you have a building there that is empty at night that could be used for that. They are not very willing to open for those hours.
There are no passive surveillance over that courtyard. So you have no people doing that.
So there's apartments that look down over the schoolyard. But again, it's just new, it's new. And I don't think that it's going to take that long for people to get used to it, but there's just a lot of resistance to this idea up front. And there's, when we talk to the teachers and tell them, there's passive resistance. You live literally from your apartment, look down the schoolyard. You can, their reaction is, we want more cameras. On every corner of the school, and we say, "Oh my God, that's crazy," but for them, that's
You're lucky they don't want guns.
It's definitely a cultural thing because, I come from Germany, and there are schoolyards in cities or towns, and they're open overnight. Not all of them.
It's definitely cultural.
And I know friends of mine, they live across from the school, so there are kids hanging around, they don't do anything.
Yeah.
But there's also apartments and a church, so there is this passive surveillance.
Yes.
And it's just a space they can use because there aren't enough spaces for kids and teenagers to just gather and be, or they can just
even to play football at night.
Or anything, or just be. Sometimes they just want to hang out and literally exist without bothering anyone or somebody feeling bothered by them.
First year, I think, and then
I was just gonna go back to that gentleman over there point of that definition, I did a presentation yesterday on a report that I put together about school streets, collating all the different examples that I could find around the world, 1,100 or more miles of damage. And there is a definitional challenge between how it is school streets are described often in Europe, which is temporary closure, North America and some other contexts tend to use it just to anything which happens outside the street. But it's an interesting report, hopefully. And I think I read your report in putting into it. So.
Just one thing that I'm very curious. Will we have access to all the presentations, online presentations? Videos?
I don't know. On the external system, like a lot of people, you can see when you go on the program and you click on the details. So a lot of files are there. Like when I just said, like a video was there, and I was surprised when he said, "I don't have it. The organizers don't have it." It's there.
Okay.
So, and I've seen a good few slides of people. Like I've seen yours. Yeah, you can see the ones.
And videos, and the sessions are videoed sometimes?
Oh yeah, it says recorded.
Well, this one is recorded.
It's recorded.
This one is
Yours
for sure.
yesterday was recorded as well, just so you know.
Okay, very good. Excellent. Okay, so, sorry.
Oh yeah, I was coming back to the point about the spaces being used otherwise, and I completely accept that we're talking about younger children here, so of course the security concerns are probably going to be heightened. But even being here on this campus, I was so delighted to see yesterday, the sports fields being used by like children's teams, like in the afternoon, or I mean, I'm sure they're being used a lot. Or I met a cousin of mine who lives over the road in Stoneybatter yesterday, and she is a teen woman, she's heavily pregnant, and she said that she walks here at night a lot of the time because it feels safe, because it's well lit and it's level and it's easy to get around. And
there's benches.
Yeah, there are benches. I just felt like it's a really nice reflection of the campus that it's being used as part of the community.
I've been noticing that it's a very lovely and open campus.
That was part of the development of the campus. So there used to be a mental hospital, like surrounded by a wall. I think somebody said yesterday, one way in, one way out. And when they developed the campus here, part of it was they had interactions with the community and say, where do you want to, where do you want access points? And also, what would you like? And they've asked for a playground. That's why there's a playground on the campus when you walk around.
Yes.
I had a couple of comments around rights of way, both to Simon and then also for your presentation. Yes. The trails, are they informal? Who owns the land? And I guess going on for your presentation, we can come on to a different topic. Do those trails or walkways already exist, or you have to make them? I think it's a similar theme across both.
Yeah, Tirana, totally depends. We attempted to map some of them in the neighborhoods at one point, and for the most part, they're on public land.
Right.
And there's a few that aren't, and of course, in those cases, you wouldn't be able to touch them, or the city wouldn't be able to. For the most part. It's trails like that I showed. That's really like a dirt path, but most of them throughout the city are just, parallel to the road, on a kind of like resident, like kind of almost courtyard kind of thing, which used to be parking, which maybe isn't.
Yeah.
So we think of them as just sort of the alternative network of these spaces are.
There's no concept, like in the UK, we have a concept of rights of way. Council holds.
No, we don't use a term similar to that. Right. It's the same concept, though. Okay. We just call it public land. Yeah.
And
it's the same. There are different kinds of statutes, roads. Actually, we expected that there would be more like hidden roads that were neglected during ages, but in the end, it was just a few that were open again. But I actually think that so we can explain this better because it's your specialty, no?
Maybe I can add something. I think we have something similar.
Yes.
Right of way.
Yeah.
So the use of some roads, slow roads or paths, has sometimes nothing to do with the ownership of the road. So there is a right of way. But the land is owned by someone who lives there. But you can can use the road. Everyone can use the road.
So if someone builds a fence, is it illegal or?
Yeah, of course, there are a lot of problems that occur, but we try to solve them, map them, stuff like that. But of course, some roads or public roads are owned by governments and stuff like that also.
Does the council have the power to force the owner to take down the fence? Is that?
They have in all. I don't know how it is in Belgium. They give us public roads. Not seeing who the owner is, and it has been used publicly for 30 years.
30 years?
Yeah, it must be stay public. If someone puts up a fence, they can be ordered to take building. Yeah.
I know the Ramblers in England.
Yeah.
Very good.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Because sometimes these things do apply across different countries, but sometimes they just don't have policies.
One thing that there is some laws in Europe that along rivers, you need to keep the access open.
Yeah.
So the problem sometimes is what the definition of a river, or just a little line of water.
And often it goes from wide path and it's getting smaller every year, and then this gate or a fence. And so
Also farmers always take it off the road.
Yeah.
I was fascinated about the thing about the oak that was the original thing. The story that I could tell you that in Cambridge there is a chapel that they use a huge beam made of wood, logs, and oak, and recently, a decade ago or something, they decided that they needed to substitute because it was not good. And it was such a big beam. Then they asked around, and apparently one of the janitors or something did, the people that built this 200 years ago, they put a forest because they knew you would need the beams of. I think that's an interesting story how you can think forward in terms of sustainability. Just plant something for the future. That's a beautiful story. But anyway, I know that people with disabilities is always difficult in trails and stuff. Did you but for example, you could have like the last kilometer or something like that could be accessible. Did you have any kind of interest in that kind of people with wheelchair?
In the Dublin project, no, we did not include this, but maybe it's something for the future. And as you say, the last few kilometers straight to the center, to the basilica, are quite accessible.
Any more? Yes?
Yeah, maybe a question for all presenters, because there's some sort of more or less participation was in the project. Were you surprised by something which you brought in, which was not in your own minefield, and which was totally off the line, but the Kuchas and maybe realized or implemented that maybe all four of it was something brought in which was surprising and which had added value to the project?
I think I was really just quite surprised how enthusiastic and excited people were about something that might sound a little old-fashioned, or there was a lot of local input.
And people came from in this public came from other areas in Belgium, because that's quite difficult to bring in people.
No, so we did the workshops.
They were local.
They were did them local, so it was mainly local organizations that were present, and the ones that were present were really actively.
So you have to sort of roadshow along the track?
Yes. Not in every municipality, but we did, a certain roadshow.
One thing I was curious, because it's like 30, 40 kilometers, so it's like a 2 days, there is like an overnight sleep?
Depends on who's
How
walking.
you do it, yeah, okay.
The longest trek was 40 kilometers, but they usually just do it in
Early morning, late evening.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, yes?
I have a question about the Mulroney Village project. What the overall cost for that project was, how it was funded, and also what's the term for like treatment of a village like that?
I will have to come back to you on this. I have no idea what it costs. Basically, in terms of the participation, like what are we looking at? So, Transport Infrastructure Ireland, we do have the national road networks, but we also look up light rail Ireland. I come from the light rail side, and this was new to me as well. But I can give you the information, if you give me the details. What impressed me was actually how the people in the village, it's a tiny village, very rural. They had this road going through their village. They organized themselves. They used options available to them. You know, they worked with the council and with the National Roads Office, and then obviously Transport Infrastructure Ireland. And the works were delivered in 2015. And as you know, there was a big recession. And Ireland was very hard hit, so public bodies didn't have much money available to them. But they got this done, and not only did they get footpaths, they also got the public realm, which in turn brought money into the village. So they had a greenway where people would cycle, but as the lady said, they were cycling through it. People were just like, nah, we're not staying here. And now, you know, even selling ice cream, coffee, whatever it is, people stay there. So it had a big effect, but I think a lot of it was down to the people mobilizing. And one of the conversations we had was everybody on board with this? Because as you know, some people want walking facilities, some don't. And we had one of the gentlemen, Sean, in the video. We were like, was everybody on board? And he just smiled and said, they were, when Pat and TRI came along. So they did a lot of the advocating work themselves, and then they were basically united on funding. There are mechanisms, you probably know that. The funding stuff in Ireland, there is. I think it's partly councils. It's part TRI coming from the Department of Transport. As I said, I'll need to get back to you.
It's before the 360 million that everybody's very.
No, that was 2015. That was what was so
previous.
special about it. It was a small village. There wasn't much money around, and we just thought that's why it was nice to show people. That's why we're doing all of this.
So my point really is, one, I was talking to a chap at break earlier, was talking about ageing in place. Well, he used the phrase, but it was really talking about ageing in place in villages and how do you keep villages alive in rural Ireland. And to me, this seems like that's your promotional video for how do you reinvigorate communities so that they bring money into them, but you also provide environments where people can remain physically active as they age.
Yeah.
It's obviously particularly important to people. So it seems like one of the key things for Ireland and in other countries is to ensure that the Treasury makes the departments of health, transport, economy, housing, etc. understand that the money that comes from the Treasury ultimately will need to be spent and shared out to ensure that the money will get spent. If you don't do those sorts of things to make the place healthier, then more people will become ill. The health services will have to pay more money out. That ultimately comes from the Treasury. So the Treasury has to tell all departments that they need to support these things because ultimately society will benefit from it. It's obvious, of course, but that message needs to go from the top ministers down to say, we're all in this together and we just give money out to one department to do that, but it's the health benefits and all the rest of it come through. So I just think it's a really good promotional video. It just needs an intro to go with it if you're not available.
I thought it speaks for itself.
Well, maybe it does. But that wider context and stuff about like, oh, we're in it together and keeping communities alive that might otherwise die as people leave them, then that's really important because the knock-on negative costs are huge.
And that's the importance of national strategies. That if you have interministerial commissions, that's the beauty of walking and cycling. It's so transversal to all kinds of topics.
It's what Rona said earlier on the platform, wasn't it? You know, you can talk about walking in any ministry and you get it.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Just in my defense, we were told to keep the videos under 3 minutes. So that's why it is 3:15. So I got a scolding for that. But no, so we didn't talk about funding because we just thought let the people tell the story, so.
Yeah, it's good enough. It just needs to surround.
Yeah. You come from Germany. There is a colleague.
But I've been living here for a long time. I'm
Long
probably
time?
a hybrid by
Yes, you have a beautiful accent.
I know, I'm sure it's not.
But I have a colleague from Walk21 Institute, and he did a study in German, which I don't read, but it was about how do you solve when a national road crosses a little village, and there is like a canal 6 meters. So
the road goes over the canal, or is it parallel?
And,
Is it parallel? Or does it
No,
go over
it's
the
true.
canal?
It's true.
So the village is crossed like it's sliced.
Yeah, it's like the case exactly of the video. Yes, and you don't have the money, or it's not even reasonable to do bypasses in every one. So yeah, I don't know the results, but actually in the beginning of the video, I saw a case that looked like that. Yeah, like
I'd say there's a lot of places worldwide that look like this, where they have a road, no footpaths, and people leave their houses and they're standing on
just
the road.
step out to the road.
But
then the rest of the video, it seems to have a much more space than in the beginning.
That's why they said because of the topography. So you have a national road,
yes,
and you cannot move it there because of the topography. So there's really, it's by the sea, it goes up into
then I understood.
No, but then they cut in. So the intervention was also, they had to kind of slice into the mountain, and that's why you have walls.
So they cut
the walls aren't pretty. You saw the walls with the red stones. So you literally need to take soil out here and put it on the other side to build.
Okay, so that's expensive, but it's
And
good.
that's why it's that significant intervention. So it wasn't just taking a bit of road, because you still need the piece of infrastructure you need.
Very good. Excellent.
But yeah.
Yes.
See, I saw something else in the video that I think is really important, which is in the prior case, there was no access management, which makes it incredibly unsafe because of all the conflicts. People don't, that was all regularized in the new design. And that's something else that is greatly needed to enhance the safety and comfort in places like that. These wide, sprawling, ambiguous, you can drive in anywhere to park in front of this thing. That was gone.
Janine, are you still there?
She's just
left. She's dropped off.
A message.
Okay. Oh, wonderful conversation. You need to drop. Oh, for a meeting. Oh, so she should have told me that. I could have given priority to her questions. I had questions for her. Where did she get all these gurus to get the park? I've been hearing about Minecraft for many years, but it was quite impressive how they designed the park. I'm really sorry. I didn't see that. Okay, so anybody wants to? You had a very nice conversation. We still have 20 minutes. We don't need to stay here.
Any question for
yes,
because you also we got the people out and we are developing something which is maybe out of their interest, old-fashioned. But now this used. Have you done any reviews on the users and what they think of it? Are there specific target or age groups who use these paths, or does it stimulate people in the environments and communities to walk more or to use these tracks? Is there any
I don't have any
data on it?
I don't have any data about it, so we just launched the project on Facebook basically. I've received some small emails on Facebook. Most people seem to be really excited, but I cannot tell you there's like increasing.
Are you in any way monitoring things or intense monitoring?
No, because actually it was like a temporary project, and it's going to be discussed actually in a few weeks if we're going to prolong it. But I think it's going to be more the task of the municipalities and the tourism offices about it. And then we will see.
Yes.
Two questions. First one, is it possible for me to get the contact information? So I can just email her the question.
Sorry?
Is it possible for me to get the contact information so I can email her?
Contact information of the speakers?
Yes.
I don't think so.
I'm not aware of any anyway.
But
yeah,
look, most of them, except Jenny, is here.
Yeah, I was
So,
actually a question
yeah,
about
just
my
ask, exchange addresses. And I don't know if the
Usually
conference
when you
will.
Google names, loads of people
Yeah,
on
I'll do that.
LinkedIn, and then you can probably find.
Does the website of the conference?
No, and sometimes when you Google a name and then their LinkedIn comes up.
Yeah.
And then you can get them
She's on LinkedIn.
It's okay.
But if the presentations are available, then
Yeah.
contacts are
And
on
usually,
the last slide.
usually the contacts on this
Final slide.
will do that.
Maybe on the X order as well.
And the other thing about is that the staffing for the school sometimes is actually useful to utilize the parents and grandparents and all the students to organize them to volunteers.
Yeah.
And
That's a good
then come
idea.
and
Yeah.
That's okay. Let's go for lunch.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Yes, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.